All right. Welcome, Sally. Thanks for being on the Fempreneur Marketing Podcast. Looking forward to getting to know you today. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you right now?
Yeah, I am in my office in Linville, North Carolina, in the United States. It's in the northwest corner of North Carolina, up in the mountains. And
Beautiful.
yeah, it's beautiful. Actually, all of our leaves have fallen already.
Oh, wow.
So we're past fall and into winter here.
Okay. And you actually get winter there, unlike some other parts
Oh,
of.
we get like 6 to 8 months of winter.
Yeah.
Like it's final snow by May.
So you're
So
practically in Canada.
yeah, exactly right. Like we already had a snow. So yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. And so, how long have you had your business? I know you've been in this line of work for quite a while, but
I
your own
have.
business doing this kind of on your own terms, how long have you been doing that?
Yeah, since 2020, because 2020 was a great time to start a business, right? I was planned on starting in February of 2020 and was like, wow, things are really going south quick. But actually just put it off for like 6 months. So I've had my own business for 3 years, going on four now.
Nice. And so if you could give fempreneurs like a startup tip, something that
Mhm,
really helped you kind of stay in the game at the beginning, what would that
mhm.
be?
I'll give a couple of them. One is a friend of mine encouraged me to meet with 1 to 2 people per week, every week for as long as I could. And I still do that. Like I don't do it every week now. It's really more one to two per month, but always just asking people what they're up to. If somebody wants to talk to me, always do that, really making connections. The second piece is I did some volunteer work, especially when COVID was happening and I wasn't able to kind of plug in. And so I was able to do some virtual volunteer work as a consultant. And that was super helpful for me because I was able to kind of give back to organizations, but then also kind of start to hear myself and be like, what are the things I'm saying over and over again? Or like, what are the things that are exciting me about volunteer work, and people typically would give you feedback after a session and things like that. So that was really helpful for me in kind of honing in on what I wanted to do.
I love that. And I've noticed that you've been on quite a few podcasts over the last
Mhm.
little while here. You engaged a podcast booker to help you with that,
Mhm.
I think, right? That's
I
awesome.
did. Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
that
I
part
did.
of that strategy where you're like, I need to meet with 1 to 2 people a week, so I'm going to use podcasting as a platform, or how did that come to be part of your strategy?
That's a great question. No one's asked me that before. I will say that was just really kind of part of my marketing strategy this year because I knew I am like a total podcast geek. Like I've been in a podcast for, gosh, probably 10 years. So much that my family jokes, like I start every sentence with today I listened to on a podcast. But I didn't want to start my own podcast. I was not ready for that yet. So I was like, oh, I'd really like to be on some podcasts, especially around kind of pay equity and really kind of building out my thought leadership there. That was kind of one of my goals for this year, was build out my thought leadership. So um, I'd heard of some podcast booking agencies, so I engaged one, and yeah, it's been really helpful for me this year.
Great. Well, I'm really glad that you did that because that's how I have had the
Mhm.
pleasure of getting to know you a little bit and a lot more. So today I'm going to get lots of good info out of you. You talk a lot about, like you said, pay equity. How did you kind of come to feel like that was your calling, that
Mhm.
niche that you were meant to serve?
Ooh, I'll try to sum this up. But, I will say, and I've worked in human resources for the last 25 years. And so when you work in human resources, you automatically work in pay, right? And so I've worked in the corporate world where, working with executives who are making outrageous amounts, to like frontline people, all the, big corporations, things like that. But really, kind of in the last 10 years, working, especially when we moved into rural North Carolina, really kind of hearing this myth of like, oh, it's so much cheaper to live here, in this rural area versus living like in a big city. And then I'm kind of looking at like the where I was working at the time, like the wages, and I'm like, gosh, I just don't think this matches up. Like, I don't think we're paying well enough. And so kind of some things converged in there. One is started really looking at cost of living where we were and was like, oh my gosh, it is so much more expensive to live here than even in some of the big cities. Just because of like transportation, food, access to healthcare, housing, things like that. And then, kind of at the same time, I was working at a nonprofit at the time, and we got a huge endowment gift And they asked for the extra money to kind of be geared towards the employees. And so my boss at the time was like, "What do you want to do?" And so I got like this creative platform, and I was like, "I just don't want to kind of throw, something jello at the wall and see what sticks. I want to be like methodical about it." So I was able to kind of pull that into, I was doing graduate school at the time, and so pull that into my thesis and do research around it. So now, then 2020 happened, and like everybody's talking about pay equity. So it was great timing. So now it's just great because so many more people are interested in it and willing to have the conversation.
Right. So, I don't really come from the corporate world. I did work for a
Mhm.
large corporation for 3 years, and that's really the only experience I have, and it was not 100% pleasant, I'll just say that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So where are people, like, finding out about this, and then what are they actually doing
Mhm.
about this pay equity issue? And, like, how do you get engaged, and how do you actually help solve this problem in the work that you do? That's, like, 4 questions, but anyways.
Yeah, it's okay. We can talk about all of them. I'm ready. I will say, definitely people kind of come into the conversation in different ways. One is like you're just an employee, right? And you're working at a place and you're interested in pay equity. And so there's actually a lot of information on TikTok about this. So people may be seeing that. And so that's kind of like an individual employee. And typically, I'll just kind of say, I encourage you to have conversations, things like that, because I'm really working more on the organization side. So people will come to me and say, "Hey, we need to redo our pay structures," or, "We think we have salary compression," or, our people are saying they're not getting paid enough. And so I'll go in, and then typically I start with a pay equity assessment, which is basically we look at all their data, try to see kind of what's happening between departments. And typically I will also break that down by age, gender, race and ethnicity, intersectional identities, tenure, things like that. So we can kind of really get into some of the meat versus like the top level stuff. And then really start conversations from there. Now, I can talk about what those are, but I want to pause there and make sure I captured everything on the front end of that.
Yes, and I now I wanna know what are those 1 or 2 most common things you find
Mhm,
when you dig in like that? What are those big issues that you're seeing? Or maybe not
mhm.
big issues, but just common issues that you're seeing?
Yeah, and now I kind of primarily work with small businesses and nonprofits. So, typically, one is like people are kind of in reactive mode about compensation, especially if they don't have many employees. They may not have things like salary bands or really clear definitions on how people progress in the organization. Because, like, when you're a small business, think if you have like 5 to 20 people, it's not super, multiple levels for people to work through and things like that. So a lot of times we start talking about like, what does it mean for somebody to stay with your organization to grow? Can they grow in something besides going up? Can they go across? Can they grow, deepen in responsibility, things like that. The other piece is really looking at kind of what their minimum pay is. So, in the United States, I don't know about Canada, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics just released their 2022 data this month that the average household income to meet basic necessities is needed to be $74,000 a year, and that's in US dollars. So I don't know quite how that translates into Canadian.
That's like 180,000 Canadian. Quite tough
Yeah,
out there.
right,
Yep.
right. So I work with organizations. I'm like, okay, here's the cost of living. Like you can argue whether it should be that or not. Whatever, we can talk about that. And like there are definitely places. So like I said, I live in North Carolina, so it's closer to like 55, whereas like Seattle, Washington D.C., New York, it's more like 95 to 100,000. So there's definitely some differences, but we just kind of start talking about like, look, if you're really interested in diversity and inclusion and you're really interested in employing people from all these different walks of life, like you're limiting yourself right out of the gate if you can't pay a living or thriving wage. And so then it's kind of working with them to kind of get those to where they need to be, which is not always overnight because not every business has that kind of money.
Right. Okay. Wow. That's heavy stuff that you do.
Heavy, fun. I mean, yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely the organization it's a lot of like threading. It's like pulling, kind of once you start pulling at pay, it's like a sweater because pay is attached to so much stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's attached to how like people get promoted, it's attached to recruiting, it's attached to benefits in that are you spending more money on benefits than pay? I mean, like all these, so we end up having all kinds of conversations, and it's different for every client.
Okay, so you work with a lot of numbers in your line of work. Like you're looking at a lot of data and
Yes. I was gonna say, I don't know. Like, do I sound like a numbers person? I don't know. Yeah,
no,
definitely I
you don't
am.
seem like a numbers person, but I'm just thinking of, looking at a spreadsheet of, 25 names
Mhm, mhm,
and then, all the things, right? It's
mhm,
numbers. It's columns
mhm,
of numbers, and even how much money do we put into so and so's benefits every
mhm.
year versus if it's a copay or like I'm also a financial consultant, so
Oh, okay.
I
So
work
yeah.
in finance as well, and so that's where my brain is kind of going right now, and that just
Mhm,
sounds like a very numbers intense career that you've chosen, which is cool. I was just curious to know um after you have the conversations and do
mhm.
the digging, how much time does it kind of take you to go through all the data and come to conclusions and present solutions and options and things like that? Is it a really long process?
It really depends on the client and kind of as you're saying the financial stuff. I mean, I do typically work very closely with the finance people
Yeah,
in these organizations because they're trying to forecast, right?
right.
Like once we come to it. So typically, like a pay equity assessment is like 4 to 6 weeks, depending on kind of how much money it is and how much, like how many if you have 50 employees in 50 different locations, that might take a little bit different than if you have 50 employees in one location, because I'm having to kind of determine cost of living for those 50 things. But then from there, it's really following the lead of the client of where they are and where they want to be. I don't ever go in with the expectation that people are going to be like, this is amazing. We're going to fix all of this with our magic wand by the end of the week, right? So it's really trying to follow the client and be like, okay, one is like, where may be the greatest pain points?
Mhm.
So for instance, I had a client that we worked with when we did this data, and we figured out that it was like Black women were leaving the organization and also had salary compression, which also lined up with their DEI data that
What's
they had.
DEI?
I'm sorry, diversity, equity, inclusion, which
Okay.
also lined up with like they had done a survey around diversity and inclusion, and this segment of their employees were the most unsatisfied. So we are like, huh, that might be like a through line. Let's talk about that.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and could it be related to pay, and things like that. So, and then another group, may just be like, okay, we want to increase our minimum salary, and we're going to do that and make sure increase everybody all the way up at certain rates so that the people in the middle are not falling behind because we've raised entry level people so much. So it really kind of depends on the client. I always encourage people, I'm like, just be curious. Don't be judgmental about the data. Let's just be curious. A lot of times you inherit situations. So, it's all good. We'll figure it out together and we'll go forward.
Right. And are you coming into this process with a team of your own, like people that work with you? Do you outsource some of the things or do you do everything yourself?
All of the above. Um, I will say it just
Well
depends.
done.
Yeah, yeah. It depends on kind of how big the client situation is. I'm typically heavily involved in all of our pay equity projects because we do other work as well, and I outsource consultants and things like that for a lot of other projects, and sometimes for the pay equity work as well, just depending on how big it is, and depending on kind of the capacity of the client. Because if they don't have like a HR, because there's a lot of project management in this, as you can imagine on the finance side. If they don't have the capacity, I may be having to put in more to help them kind of do the change management around it.
Right. So what is one of your favorite things to do in your career? Like what's one of your favorites like hats to wear or type of
Mm.
project to work on?
I will say this can be across like the different services I provide, but I love doing employee feedback sessions.
Hmm.
It is so much fun. Typically, like whether it's I'm doing strategic planning or pay equity or whatever, but just whenever I get to do employee sessions where I'm just getting to ask them different questions. Sometimes it's focus groups, it's one-on-one interviews. Obviously, I don't get to interact with them when we do a survey, but those things. It's because like for instance about pay, like when I'm asking people about pay, because they're like, gosh, I've never talked about this before. Like this is,
Yeah.
like I've never really had a conversation with somebody about like the details of all of this. And so it's super fun to kind of hear people have these realizations and really kind of put things forward that they've maybe been thinking about in their minds, but have never kind of put into words before.
Mhm.
And I'm always amazed by all the amazing people who work out there.
Yeah, yeah, just meeting people and
Hmm.
right, getting to know their story and okay. So my next question is, and I don't think you've really talked about this yet
Hmm.
unless I'm having a moment. But I don't think you've really explained to us yet um, what that aha moment looked like for you when you were like,
Mm.
I'm going to have my own business. I am doing
Mm.
this with 100% control of the
Hmm.
clients I take on, with 100%
Hmm.
control of the marketing of my own thing. Like,
Mm.
when did you decide, like, I'm doing
Hmm.
the entrepreneur gig and as an HR person?
Yeah, I think I wish I could tell you it was like this single second in time, right? It definitely came over time, over like a series of years because I had been working in the field for a while. I went back and got my graduate degree when I was in my 40s. And so, which was exciting and stressful because I had kids at home and, all this. And I will say, kind of working the way that program was set up is we were doing consulting gigs with each of our like major sessions. So hearing the feedback of my cohort and my professors and doing that work really gave me the confidence to go start my own business because I think I'd always thought about it before, but I just didn't really probably believe in myself enough to be
Mhm.
like, oh, I can do this. And so that process really was like, okay, like kind of I'm getting towards the end of this program. It was right before the pandemic. And I was like, I think I'm ready. And like my partner and I kind of planned for a year about like kind of financially save and then at least a year of not making, not really
Yeah.
knowing money or even making any money in that first year. So we tried to be really intentional about it. But that was like I left my previous job in 2019, the end of 2019, and I was wrapping up grad school and was like, okay, I'm doing it. Rolling the dice. Let's do it.
Right on. So when you did actually officially start your business,
Mhm.
what were those first few steps? Like you said that you definitely recommend that people get out there and talk to one
Mhm.
or two new people a week. But what about the kind of business setup steps? What did those look like?
Yeah, you know what? This is when search engines are your friends. And I mean, even like, of course, you have Chat GPT and like all these like AI sources now. But I would just really just kind of be like, okay, what's a business plan? To look, and I would just kind of mark those things down. We have like small business offices here in the United States that you can go to for resources. And, then I just started trying to be like, okay, I'm going to like try this like as a product or like what am I really going to do? Human resources is big
Yeah.
and, you
Yeah. What
know,
am I going to be the specialist in?
exactly. And like what's kind of the niche like I can kind of work myself into. And so, um, that I did not have I mean, I had clarity enough to move forward, but not perfect clarity. I tell everybody every year I've had this business, I get clearer and
Yeah.
clearer.
Yeah.
So yeah, just kind of looking at a plan and being like, okay, what am I going to do for marketing? I decided I love to write. I don't, I felt like at the time, like I was going to focus on LinkedIn because that was pretty easy. I was already out there.
You just said you love to write. So I
Oh,
have
I
to
know. I'm totally going to buy it.
sh-
Totally. I should have bought it before yesterday, right?
That's okay.
To
It's
get the
always
discount.
available.
But no, trust me, I'm gonna follow up with you about that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I was just like, trying to kind of build on my strengths of like, where can I
Mhm.
market? Where can I, do the things that kind of feel right for me and don't feel like inauthentic, And so I tried to kind of lean into those things. And it was a lot of experimentation at first too.
Mhm. Mhm. So the website was not the first thing you did? Did that come later or
It was probably one of the first things I did. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
And that was a total experiment. Like I mean, I had to create a website in grad school for a thesis project, but like that was like the first time I had created a website. So,
And is this your first time being an entrepreneur, or had
mhm.
you owned your own business in the past? No? Okay, Cool.
Yeah, this was it. I had done like a little bit of contract work in previous jobs, but it was not like set up as like a full on my own business.
Okay. Cool. And so take us like way back to Sally Loftus, little Sally Loftus. Did
Mhm.
you ever see yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you have entrepreneurs in your life growing up, like parents or grandparents or
Yeah, I think I didn't have the language of entrepreneur, but I definitely thought I would do something on my own at some point. I have my grandfather, the one I never knew, actually was a huge entrepreneur, and I was the first person to run a vending machine company in Missouri. And
no.
so, I mean, I always grew up with stories of like, just kind of how he did and then became like a steam train photographer. And then, I mean, like
Oh.
just all these like kind of different things. So I definitely have that. And then my father is definitely kind of was always like starting businesses. And so I kind of grew up working basically the office of many of his businesses just because, you're in the house, free labor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely had that as, you know, right in front of me growing up, but never thought like, oh, I'd have this like consulting firm. But I was like, one day I'm going to do something.
Mhm. Mhm. And so now that you mentioned you love to write, I have to ask you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you like had to write a book in the next 2
Hmm.
weeks and you had
Hmm.
nothing but availability in your
Hmm.
schedule to do so,
Hmm.
do you know who it would be for and what kind of problem it would solve for those
Hmm.
people? Tell us.
I was gonna say, Lindsay, I'm not joking that I'm gonna follow up with you. You've been on my list, but I'm not quite ready. It's gonna be like December. Yeah, it would totally be about pay equity. The target audience would be for, that's kind of an interesting one because, like I said, there's multiple ways into it, right? Like you have the individual employee, you may have like the supervisor or somebody who, like the HR person, and then the senior leader, and they all have like decision making responsibilities that are different in that.
Mhm.
So I would probably, kind of build it. I don't know. It probably wouldn't be for the individual employee, but it would be for the people who can change the structures
Right.
within that. And it would be about just kind of introducing them to pay equity, helping them also understand pay transparency, and then really helping them understand how to do like a pay equity assessment, which I have like free blog post that you can do for that.
Mhm.
And then kind of sharing examples of what I've done with clients,
Yep.
and really in some way trying to build a community. I just have launched this month the Pay Equity Collective, which is a community site because there's just not a lot of like information out there for people. And what I have found is that my clients that are most successful have built connections with other businesses that they
Mm.
can just call and be like, we totally do not have this policy right. Or, what are we like? We totally like negotiating salary. I probably have 50% of my clients that negotiate salaries, 50% don't. And I'm always like, I'm 50-50. I don't know, whatever. And so for
Yeah.
them to be able to talk to another organization who maybe has a different policy or something like that and just talk it out for like 45 minutes is so valuable. So
Yeah.
I would want to write a book that would create some kind of community around that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's exciting. That's really exciting. Good for you. Look at you all fired up.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right. So, how can people get in touch with you? And do you work with Canadian clients or does it need to
I
be
can. Mhm.
corporations in the US? Okay.
I work with clients all over the world.
Okay. Cool.
And
That's
I will say, like from obviously I do more than pay equity, but like pay equity obviously looks different in every country too. Like I've
yeah,
worked with organizations in Africa,
right.
worked with organizations in Europe,
Okay.
so yeah, I definitely those conversations are all different based on what's going on there and the laws and stuff like that. Best way for people to contact me, several ways. One, you can always find me on LinkedIn. Just started the Loftus Partners Instagram, so at Loftus Partners.
Yeah.
And you can come to my website, loftuspartners.com.
Mhm.
And I will definitely follow up this with some links because if you join the Pay Equity Collective by December 1st, you actually get put into a giveaway.
Mm.
to win a free membership because we're doing 12-month cohorts where organizations work together and with me to do pay equity
Ooh,
for 2024.
good
So
for you.
yeah, I'm super excited. I love doing the work as a community to
Yeah,
build those connections. And so, yeah, I would love for people to join the Pay Equity site. It's totally free. You just have to sign up for an account, and I'll
right.
have resources out there too.
What a great idea for entrepreneurs or, like, so are these mostly business owners that are coming into the Pay Equity Collective, or are some of them like senior, executives at companies that have the decision-making power, but not necessarily the owner of the company?
All of the above.
Okay.
It's definitely a mixture of people. I have like consultants who are wanting to join just because they
Okay.
want to like hear kind of what's going on. Cause like the free site will be a place where people can post resources, can have conversations, can, ask a question. I'll have events on that as well. So it's really just kind of a place where people can find resources because there's not a place like that out there necessarily right now,
Right.
that's not behind a paywall.
Right.
And then the cohorts will be like a true, like we're working together 6 to 10 organizations at a time to do implementation. There's some one-on-one sessions with me, there's some group meetings, and then I'll also have a community of practice for people who have already done the implementation that they
Right.
can kind of continue to build the relationships and kind of keep training the muscle of pay equity, maybe is what I'll say it, together, to kind of continue to work through other things that come up.
So when people come into the paid program that you have,
Mhm,
is that a certain number of months? Is it a
mhm.
year-round pay per month thing? How does that program work from like a structure standpoint?
Yeah, it's going to start January 2024. It's a 12-month process. I'm happy. I have a calendar that I can send to people if you
Cool.
message me. Yeah, that just basically talks through it's like 6 kind of community meetings. It's 4 one-on-one sessions with me and then 2 events where you can bring as many people from your organization as you want to these events.
Smart.
Um, thank you.
Look
That
at
is a high
you. I
compliment
love it.
coming from you,
I
Lindsay.
love that.
Um,
Everything about that is just
yeah.
fantastic.
Well, and then people have also the cohorts will have their own private sites in addition to the free one where they can kind of shared resources and things like that. So I'm actually using Mighty Networks. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like
I've
a
heard of it, but I noticed your website is on
Mhm.
Squarespace, so I was kind of
Yeah.
wondering if you were using the membership feature in Squarespace because that's something that I'm doing right now for the first time, and I'm helping some of my clients with that.
How
So I
do
was
you like
wondering.
it?
So far, so good, and you could actually test it out for me. The website that I talk
Uh-huh.
about over and over again in my book
Yeah.
to
Uh-huh.
help people do the techie things,
Yeah.
that's all hosted in the Squarespace membership.
Okay. I'll have to look
So
because
yeah,
that was like rolling out right as like I talked to some people I knew that were using like somebody had used Coda, somebody had used Mighty Network, and I just kind of looked at those and it seemed like Mighty Networks kind of had all the bang for the buck in the one place.
yeah.
And Squarespace wasn't quite there yet with,
Yeah, I think
like
it's a little more basic compared to some of these other programs that specialize in that, whereas they just have
yeah,
to have some of the, capability, but not all of it. It's good
yeah.
enough for what I need it for, like, I basically have a resources page with all the downloadable checklists and tools from the
Oh,
book that I talk
nice.
about,
Yeah,
and then I
yeah.
also was able to embed videos right in there, but it's behind a paywall, but the paywall is free. You just have to, like, create your own login.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
have their email addresses so I can send them, "Hey, I just changed this video for that one because that one, there's something changed in Mailchimp now," like, just so I can stay in touch with people and, let them know
Mm.
that I am updating the info in there. And then
Yeah.
once you get inside the free version of it, there is an opportunity to upgrade to a paid, like
Uh-huh.
an authors collective. I didn't call it that, but that's
Oh, yeah.
I'm
I
stealing
know, I
your
love
word.
that word. Yeah.
I love that word too. Maybe I'll have to actually officially steal that word. So
Mhm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like a group where they can actually like you're kind of like your group where they
Mhm.
can interact and they can come to a monthly mastermind session thing. So yeah,
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to check in with you, see how it goes. So far,
yeah,
like, because I like Mighty Networks, like a lot of YouTube creators use it, and I kind of looked at a lot of those models to see, not that I'm necessarily at that level, but it was just I really liked having a forum where people could be in a private space, but not, anyways, people had
yeah,
been like, maybe we should have a Slack channel. And I was like,
yeah.
I don't
But
know.
what if
That
we
feels
have
a little
one thing that does all
right.
the things and
Yeah,
not like a bunch
exactly.
of I know, I'm with you on that. I don't want a bunch of things.
Exactly. And I was like, gosh, Slack felt a little unwieldy for that at that point. So yeah, I'll let you know
Yeah, let me
kind
know
of
how it
how it
goes. For
goes.
sure.
So yeah.
Perfect. I still am like Facebook. I'm a Facebook person. Like I use Messenger group
Yeah.
chat, so I have to be like personal Facebook
Oh,
friends with all my ladies that I meet.
oh
And
yeah.
sometimes they're a little weird. They're a little weird about it. They're like, I don't really want to be your Facebook friend. I'm like, well, you have to be if you want to be in my group stuff because I do it in Facebook Messenger and like have group chats, you know?
Yeah,
You're like,
that's
oh,
a great point. Why one of the reasons I wanted to use a like a network, kind of like the Mighty Networks thing, because I got off Facebook in 2016. Don't regret that. But um, yeah, it's a huge marketing tool. But I was like, I want to be able to have a space that because I
yeah,
had enough people who were like, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not
yeah,
on Instagram, I'm not on
exactly.
LinkedIn. I was like, I need like something that's not
Yes.
connected to these big tech. I mean, I guess not Mighty
Yeah,
Networks,
no, I
but
agree.
like these
It's
big
something
tech
that you
companies.
own too. It's like your thing, right? Just like
Yeah,
Squarespace, like we can put whatever videos we want up there and we don't have to worry about anyone taking them down because they're in our program that we own.
exactly.
Yeah. So that's cool that you're
Exactly.
doing that. I'm not sure how the Squarespace membership site works when it comes to allowing members to interact with each other or if that's even
Mhm.
possible.
Yeah.
So that I'll have to explore.
Yeah, and what I liked about Mighty Net again, I haven't done all this yet, and I think Squarespace has this now too, is like you can create courses, but
Mhm.
like you can live stream out of Mighty
Yeah.
Networks, I mean, like it has a lot of bells and whistles I've not used yet.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's cool. I'm excited for you. That's fun. I love new technology. It can be such a rabbit hole, but it's still pretty fun.
Yes, absolutely. I'm learning a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, and that's great that you're getting out there on podcasts and you're spreading the word about this thing that you've created, this awesome opportunity for people who, yeah, like it's the value of getting together with others who have similar challenges to you, who are kind of in that same boat of needing the same kind of like it's great to have someone like you, but it's also awesome and sometimes even more valuable because when you have that network of people there you're going to get at least one of them. Like if you pop into a chat and you're like, yo, I have this problem, and if they're waiting for you, you're busy, you've got a whole bunch of people,
Mhm.
sometimes one of those people in the community can quickly just say, oh, I just solved that problem last week, here's what I did. And you're just sitting back with a glass of wine watching this all go on, not having to say a damn thing. Like it's beautiful.
Well, and I do feel like I don't know about your experience, like because you do a lot of groups as well. Is I feel like these kind of small learning groups, situations are really like they're learning. I don't know, wave of the future. Maybe the wave has already passed, but I mean, like it's really people are looking for like a sense of belonging and
Oh,
community, and I think pure learning is so much more valuable because a lot even like organizations I work with, they'll have learning management systems. Well, that's typically like individually you're going through training because a lot of people don't do face-to-face training anymore. So
mhm,
being able to have a peer experience that's not paced, like I like the fact that like my peer groups, we usually meet every 2 weeks or every month. Like people can kind of absorb the
mhm,
information, rather than like, okay, I'm gonna learn everything and solve the world today.
mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It just feels, I guess, more sustainable. It's the kind of change that doesn't happen too fast. It's like everyone can
Mhm.
kind of baby step along with support. And anyways, I will let you get back to your very busy day. Thanks for letting us know about your new programs, about your awesome website with all the info. And is there anything else that's like time sensitive or any like freebies on your website or anything else we should let
Mm.
people know about?
Well, I will just say if anybody just wants to kind of have a chat, feel free to, message me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. I'm happy to send you my Calendly link and we can like hop on and, just kind of talk about what's going on. I'm happy, to make the connections. Again, I've told you multiple times, I love meeting new people and I love kind of hearing what people are doing because people are just fascinating. And so I'm always amazed when I have those conversations.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Thank you, Sally. And thanks everyone
Thank
for
you.
tuning in. You can find out more about me and the Fempreneur community at yycfempreneurs.com. All right. Bye for now.
Bye.